Hey, you guys, thanks for joining us with our ongoing coverage. Good morning to you. It is 2:02 a.m. Eastern Time, 1:02 Central Time, and we now have an official landfall from our catastrophic Category 4 Hurricane Laura. It literally made landfall within the last 2 minutes. The National Hurricane Center officially making the call during their 1 a.m. Central Time update. So the official call was the city we were talking about, Cameron, Louisiana. Catastrophic storm surge, extreme winds, and flash flooding occurring in portions of Louisiana. So the actual center itself is about 30 miles south-southwest of Lake Charles. That's very near Sulphur, where our storm chaser Aaron Jack. Yes. Hang on one second. There we go. Is that better? All right, let me turn this. I still hear that echo too. I don't know if it's on my end, but I muted my Slack call. And maximum sustained winds at 150 miles an hour. So the movement is towards the north now at 15. The Hurricane Center called that beautifully, said that we were going to get a northward movement. And as you can see, as I'm going to zoom in here, we are going to take a look at the actual center. And the actual center itself, you guys, this eye is about 28 miles across. So there's Cameron, Louisiana, Lake Charles there, and I'm going to get it even closer, but I'm going to put on another zoom feature here with our product so I don't go too far in. So you can see Lake Charles, and let me grab this. So there is Lake Charles, Cameron here, the official landfall just in these last 4 minutes, and it continuing to move towards the north. So Lake Charles, as feared, will be on that northeast side where the most intense winds, the most impactful storm surge, but again, it's going to be impacting many areas here along the Louisiana coast, and then making that movement towards the north now at 14. So that's going to, again, be the telling feature as this very dangerous hurricane moves up the central part of Louisiana over these next several hours. So let me do a storm query here while we're here, zoomed in. We'll see the rain rates. And these have been in the neighborhood of an inch an hour, but I'm telling you this particular product, and again, I'm just kind of randomly querying here. So this one rain rate was 1.5 inches an hour. But the biggest concern with some of these feeder bands is the rapid potential to drop serious rainfall in a short period of time. Tropical downpours, as I mentioned about an hour ago, are not the same as a summer storm that you get in your backyard every day. They drop heavy rain in short periods of time, and flooding becomes a major concern. Now that we have an official landfall, we will continue to have concerns. Boy, look at all of the early detections of the potential rotation here. So let me pull this in, and our software picking up on lots of rotation, not unusual to see on a landfalling hurricane. Tornado watches up for the duration of the overnight hours into early this morning, which now, of course, is Thursday morning. And then let me take a look over here, because looks like some of the rotation here might actually have some potential to have some brief spin-ups. The National Weather Service, of course, takes over that part of storm tracking. So the Hurricane Center obviously tracks the hurricane. National Weather Services track the actual severe weather events, severe storms, tornadic storms. And let me turn off the shear markers, because that's kind of deceiving here. There we go. So kind of floating around here, these cloud tops in this particular slice that I took around 40,000 feet. There's some of the heavy rain bands at 20,000 feet and down to the surface. And if I switch this over real quickly to storm velocity, we're getting some, indications here. You can see the reds inside the greens, and we're not getting any strong indications of any Doppler radar indicated. There's no tornado warnings here, but our software picking up on this, and if that trend continues, we could see the National Weather Service issue a hang on one second, I've got to need something else over here. We could see the National Weather Service perhaps issue tornado warning, but that's currently not the case in this area. But it's interesting to see. I always think it's fascinating to see landfalling tropical cyclones, because they create so many different weather events: storm, wind, rain, and in some cases tornadoes. So you get almost the full gamut here. I've got to get back caught up to my show because I went too far out. I wanted to show you this infrared real quick, and then I'm going to bring Stefanie Lauber in. This really, I recorded this because this is such a scary sight when you see something like this, such a well-organized, concentric, the donut shape of this hurricane right up until landfall. Now that you see, notice how that last frame, you kind of see the round donut there, the center kind of collapse on the south side. That, you know, just indicates that the well-defined eye is now going to be directly impacted by the land, obviously, and we're going to see some rapid decrease in winds, but still we're talking about a Cat 4. So it's not going to go from a Cat 4 to a Cat 1 in a matter of hours. It is going to be 24 hours or maybe 30 hours before we see the hurricane force winds actually deflate enough to get out of that really dangerous category. And, or not, you know, Cat 1s can produce significant power outages, can create damage if you don't have a home that you've prepped for Cat 1 winds. A lot of folks that are in northern Louisiana, I suspect, probably didn't prep for this hurricane. I don't know, but that's a lot of times in Florida where we are, where that happens a lot. A lot of Floridians, if they see a storm come in at one angle of the state, they don't think they need to prepare, but they can be in the direct path. So certainly I hope a lot of folks in Louisiana and Arkansas have heeded the direction from the Hurricane Center and their local officials that we're going to see this wind field stay together for several hours. Let me show the wind gusts currently, and then I hand it over to Stefanie here real quick. But we've seen in the neighborhood, oh yeah, look at that. Lake Charles currently has a gust of 97.8, and I can tell you that in Cameron, about an hour ago, they had a wind gust over 100 miles an hour. So it'll be interesting to see how long the anemometers down there, the sensors, can stay together. We saw all of those get blown out with Michael, and of course, Dorian was a different scenario, but hopefully we'll see these weather stations hold together, and we might see some of these not be able to sustain some of these Cat 3 and the winds, or I'm sorry, Cat 4 winds of 150 miles an hour. But it is just going to get worse from here, and I mean quick, in this area of the country. So we will continue to monitor that as we head through the overnight step. Well, what are you seeing on the My Radar app? Stefanie, can you hear me by chance?
Leslie, I think you're talking to me, but I can't quite hear you. Okay, all right. I'm going to take that as a cue to pick up here with what's going on in the app. So what's been going on here is, as we watch this landfall occurring, and has officially been called by the National Hurricane Center, something that's interesting to know is we've got this wobbly feature of the center, and I'm actually going to turn off the warnings here in a second. I'm going to talk about that here in a moment. I know Leslie was going over some of the dangers with the rotation and these bands and the tornadoes. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to point out this wobbly feature that we began to see at the end of our last broadcast as the center makes its way onshore, starting to see what is a good sign for folks out here, as that wobbling, that less symmetrical, oh, it looks like you guys aren't seeing what I'm seeing. Let's fix that. So that wobbly feature, if you're tracking along in your app at home, then you'll notice it's not quite that symmetrical circle that we expect to see within the system that we've seen over the past several hours before now. So with that interaction with land, that kind of disrupts the circulation. Even if you look closely, a bit of an opening there between the eye wall. And so with that, a sign of some backing down. I don't really want to say weakening, because this is a very strong Category 4 system. So with that, this is problematic. This is a formidable storm that is moving onshore. And, the radar tells you everything you need to know here with the intensity of this. So I'm actually, let's see, Matt, do we have a good view of this radar now? Is that shared with everybody up here? Okay, awesome. So I'm going to turn our warnings layer back on and show you some things that I was looking at. With terms, we've got a lot of warnings out here, a lot of concern weather-wise. Obviously, this is a big deal with this storm coming on shore. Very strong Category 4 hurricane. So with that, moving into portions of Louisiana, here are some of those tornado warnings. And you'll notice at the top of this bulletin issued by the National Weather Service office in Brownsville, Texas, jumping in for the folks here at the Lake Charles National Weather Service office. So this tornado warning is for Lafayette Parish in south central Louisiana, and that includes northwestern Iberia Parish and also northwestern St. Mary Parish in south central Louisiana. And goes into even Acadiana Parish and Allen Parish, because we've seen these bands come on shore. So with that, the rotation, the interaction with land, we get that spin up. And as Leslie's been mentioning here throughout the coverage on the graphics that we've got up there, we're going to continue to see this kind of risk continue through the next several hours into the evening hours as these bands come ashore. And the good news here is, from what I'm looking at on radar with the eye, I don't want to give too much hope here because, again, very strong storm, but we're going to take any silver lining we get with this scenario. As the eye is moving on shore, you can notice that bright yellow and even some of the reds popping up in the band on the northern or top side of the eye wall. We're not really seeing that on that southern edge of the eye wall. Usually when these systems come ashore, the eye wall is the worst heavy hitting system of thunderstorms. Then we get a nice calm break in the eye, which can be dangerous because especially before we had the level of meteorology that we have in modern times, people would think that was the end of the threat, that was the end of the storm, and then the second half, the other half of the semicircle would come on shore, the eye wall, and be very, very dangerous for folks. It's a great sign to see that we're not getting those intense echo returns on the radar here. So perhaps the second half of the eye wall not being as fierce as that first half coming on shore. Trying to find the silver linings here for folks. But as I pan around the radar here, you can see intense banding to that northeastern side, the dirty quadrant, front right quadrant of the storm, going over parts of southern Louisiana. Morgan City about to get some more intense rain here in a moment. Folks in Baton Rouge getting some rain. Doesn't look like we've got the kind of intensity that we're getting in places like Lafayette or maybe places further west down 10 towards Jennings and eventually into Lake Charles. And as a reminder, we're just getting into the eye wall for folks here in Lake Charles, as you can see here on the radar with me. Now on the western side of the storm, the Texas side we'll call it, things in Houston have been looking a lot better than it has for the folks on the other side of the storm here. Not really getting much rain getting picked up by the radar here. So we'll turn on the per station radar and look at Houston's radar site here. Just a sec while that loads. And wow, you can even pick it up from Houston's radar, the intensity of that eye wall moving in closer to Lake Charles. Let's check the Lake Charles radar and see if we're still getting data from that. We are, and that's incredible. Yeah, some intense storms moving in right now at the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles. And actually you can see sulfur on the map there, very close to Lake Charles, and that's where our storm chaser Aaron Jack is hanging out, tackling this storm. And so it'll be interesting to see what kind of reports we get back from him as this eye wall moves in now to the area approaching the I-10 corridor, and this storm now making an official landfall. Here is where we start the second half of our race, and really the race continues on here as we watch Laura make its way inland, and over the next couple of days we'll be here tracking that for you. But Leslie, what's some of the latest data that we're seeing coming in off our graphics there with WSI?
Yeah, I know you can see it too, Steph. It's pretty incredible in that short period of time that you were going over the radar. And again, great job with the analysis of the eye wall. I was going to mention that too, but you showed it so great there on the radar that you noticed in that last frame the raggedness. And actually, Matt, if you can pull up Steph's radar, she talked about it, but it really is quite noticeable in that last frame. If you can pull up the My Radar app full for a second, and then we'll go back to this product. Notice on that. Yeah, that last frame. So you can see that just as Steph was saying, on the southern side of the eye wall there, it's not as circular, and and actually you can kind of see a pulsation in the last 2 or 3 frames of that, where you kind of see the eye wall expanding, which, again, we might be reading tea leaves here, but it could be an early indication of some denigration of that eye. It's not going to be immediate. We're not going to, as we've all been saying, we're not going to go from a 4 to a 1 in a matter of hours, but is encouraging in these very early indications that as Stefanie rotates that, ticks it, frame by frame, that we might be seeing, some degeneration of the eye as it pulls on shore. And it's amazing too what Steph talked about, that we're still getting data out of Lake Charles, because that office completely abandoned ship, got out of their service. Brownsville, Texas is actually the official station that's reporting the data is reporting for the folks in that area, because they abandoned. There's mandatory evacuations, and the folks at the National Weather Service in Lake Charles left smartly enough, because as Stefanie mentioned, they are getting winds and I'm sure their readings, their anemometers and all their weather stations there are probably broke already, and we're not going to be getting real-time data. I haven't actually looked. There might be in the weather chat. There might be some readings from them still. But, in excess of 110 miles an hour. And Matt, if you want to go back over to WSI, because while Stefanie was talking, the wind gust updated literally right when we went from her radar picture to what we see now. So the Lake Charles wind, this is a live wind gust of 108. So and again, it is still south of the eye wall is still south of Lake Charles. So they will easily get in that 140, 150 range. This is a gust, so that adds on, again, in that range, 10% or more from the sustained wind. But you're still going to be talking about easily winds from Cameron up into Lake Charles, north of Lake Charles, in that vicinity of 150 miles an hour. That is big time damage. And I know we didn't go over this, but if you can pull up that downtown Lake Charles video that Aaron Jack shot, I think you have it. It looks like perfect. Thank you so much. Look at this. Now, they did not do any storm preps. Aaron talked about this. We all commented that none of these businesses unfortunately boarded up. I don't know. We're not there. We don't know why there was not more preparations. It looked like a normal day. As you can see, it's pretty quiet. That may or may have not been because of the hurricane, probably was, but it struck me, and it struck Aaron in all the years he's been chasing storms, that there was no storm shutters, there was no plywood put up, there was, at least at this vantage point, no effort to try and limit the damage, because Lake Charles right now is getting socked with 108 mile per hour wind gusts, and it's going to only go up, which is sustained winds of 140 to 150. So, we wish these folks the best. I know these are small businesses. Everybody's been impacted already by this pandemic on some levels exponentially, and the last thing you need is a Category 4 hurricane to just wipe out your business when you're trying to survive during a pandemic. So I really hope that those folks, that there's more to that story that we see in that video. But, it's really so sad to see so many people that are probably going to be severely impacted by this hurricane. So there's a look at the winds, and just look to the left, to the right there. The winds go down exponentially to around 40 miles in Lafayette on the right, which is to the east, and then on the left towards the west, Beaumont over in Texas, about 45 mile per hour gusts. So again, the one silver, look at that now. Geez, I didn't miss that. 127, Stefanie, 127.7 in Lake Charles, and again, in a gust. So we are going to easily get to 150. The gust could be in the range of 160, 165. We'll see how long the weather gauges last there. Hopefully we'll continue to get data, but boy, it is going south quickly in Lake Charles, which is going to get, again, the brunt of what Laura is going to deliver in these coming hours. So another look here at the infrared, and again, we talked about this very concentric, organized, tidy, for lack of a better word, hurricane with all these features that indicates how well organized this engine is and how well it runs. It's almost like a NASCAR car that runs so efficiently on a track. It's a NASCAR versus I don't want to name it for naming a car that's not fast, but you put it near an elite system, an elite fast car like a NASCAR, and compare it to an everyday street car, and there's no comparison. So this is such a well-run, well-defined machine, and we can only hope that as it continues to interact with land, that it's going to deflate quickly. So it is going to move quickly. We know that. It's going to move off the Atlantic seaboard by Saturday. Still going to try and maintain some type of extratropical low or some type of tropical characteristic. Won't be impacting land, but it's interesting to see that the Hurricane Center does think it's going to hold enough together as we head into the weekend that we'll still be talking about Laura in the coming days. Here's a look at the potential wind gusts. We wanted to show this product because, again, we've been talking about Lake Charles, but it's not just them. The entire state of Louisiana is going to get winds in the Cat 2 range. Some folks in the Cat 3. The further down towards the south, towards the center, you're going to be in the Cat 4 range, obviously. Lake Charles, again, will be in that direct zone of those Cat 4 winds. But even Arkansas, we've been talking about, and maybe extreme eastern Oklahoma and extreme eastern Texas are going to be in that peripheral zone of some of those Cat 2 and Cat 3 winds as we head into these next few hours. Not Cat 3, but Cat 2 and Cat 1 for sure. So here's a look at as we get into the early mornings of Friday, again holding together nicely. This particular product calls for winds around 50 to 60 miles an hour in Little Rock, down towards Louisiana. Again, the winds will get better because you'll start to see lesser impacts. And then as it moves towards the Tennessee and Mississippi River valleys after that, we'll continue to see the impacts lessen. But we're still going to be talking about, some tropical storm winds. And that can, if you're not prepared, if you have, we always see trampolines lofted in trees, and we always see lawn furniture scattered about. So, if you're in that zone of the path, you really do need to make some indirect preparations, because there will be that potential for some, tropical storm force winds in that region. Rainfall, again, thankfully, we think is going to be a narrow swath. We talked about Harvey. We've talked about so many storms. This, in terms of rain, is not a Harvey. That Harvey stalled out and created 60 inches of rain, in the Houston, near the Houston area. So, this is not going to be that event. But we're still talking about 5 to 7 inches of rainfall, and some areas higher than that. And this particular product shows the 5 to 7 range in central and southern Louisiana, eastern Texas, and then up into northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas. We could get in the range of 3 to 5 inches. Just a quick look here. I'm going to toss it back to Steph. We can look at the last 24 hours. You can just see that impressive imagery coming through the Gulf of Mexico. See the eye feature there earlier in the day today, the exhaust from the engine, the feathering effects there on the outer rotation, just all indications of a very powerful hurricane. Steph, have there been any tornado warnings that you've seen, or any interesting things popping up on the radar?
I just brought up now to really support your point that we're still going to be dealing with some lofty winds here going into the next several hours. Looking at our hurricane tracker here with the official National Hurricane Center track, by noontime tomorrow, center of Laura, or what's left of the center of circulation, will be near the Jasper area here into Louisiana, heading towards Arkansas, and we're still looking at Category 2 conditions. So sustained winds will be up there heading even into tomorrow morning as the storm continues to move north. But yeah, we're starting to see some more separation in these bands that come through, and I'm seeing less red on the radar here, which again is a good sign. But as you noted, we saw those extreme wind gusts. It's not your everyday kind of thing, and may not seem like a lot when you look at the number itself, but to experience that, it is quite an incredible feat. So that's something that we'll be looking at here well into the next several hours and into the morning hours. I'm going to take the hurricane tracker off here, and we'll take a look. I was checking out the velocities here just a moment ago, and from the Lake Charles radar, didn't see anything that was in particularly catching my eye. But like I said, sometimes these little spin-ups only last about a radar scan, and let's see if we can find anything, if we had some updates from this latest one. I've got our reflectivity on here, and wow, when you pull up that Lake Charles radar, oh, let's see, we may have lost the radar here. Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's dropping out right in the past couple of scans, so that may be it. I wonder what that last recorded gust would have been out of there. I'll have to check the METAR later, but there it goes, folks. There goes the radar in Lake Charles with the eye wall moving in here towards that area. But if I can stop it right before we lose that frame, I'll hold my zoom here, move a little bit closer. Yep, so it looks like the last radar image we're getting is at 2:03 a.m. If I turn on the velocity scan, let's see if I can stop it right around that time. Yeah, so near the station itself, of course, we're getting winds in this area likely to be generally from the east towards the west. We wouldn't necessarily see any kind of obvious rotation. A lot of this, if it were coming up, like I said, in 1 or 2 scans, you'd have to be looking real hard to catch it kind of situations. But if we move around, likely to pick up the Baton Rouge, the New Orleans radar down here. Let's see if we can, or you know what, let's catch this radar to the north over here. I'm not sure which station this is. Let's see if we can pull this up. Yeah, we're getting some pretty intense winds over here, guys. You can see from those brighter shades of red and green, those intense wind gusts that are coming in as the storm approaches on land. Something that I noticed when we were looking at the bigger picture and that satellite overlaid with radar that you just showed, Leslie, we've got a little less organized storm structure with this feature coming up here, and I wanted to point out that band that seems to have strayed away from the storm here. I'll zoom out so we can see a better picture of that, going back to our high def radar, and you can see this band's kind of broken on its own. It's that one long major band here that kind of comes off the coast in the middle of the boot here. We're starting to see things maybe look like they're unraveling just a little bit. Again, not trying to be too optimistic here because it's still a powerful storm. And something else we've noticed is looks like the eye appears just a bit wider. And here we are about to get that second part of the eye wall coming in, nearing the coastline. We're seeing it close in a little bit, but again, not seeing any reds popping up on that half of this semicircle, which is great news in comparison to what we now know is winds that are capable of taking out a WSR D88 radar. So yeah, impressive stuff there. But we're beginning to see the land interaction quickly have an impact on the circulation and ultimately the strength of this storm. I'd be curious, Leslie, to see what we find if we look on water vapor imagery to see if we can tell any signs of things beginning to fall apart a little bit in the upper levels of the atmosphere. See if maybe our buddy, that trough, is doing anything to help us out here. Maybe some upper level shear, maybe working in cahoots with the landmass to try to tear this thing apart, because we've had this perfectly symmetrical shape earlier on, and now we're beginning to see, right as it's made landfall, quickly a change in the outlook on this. So folks, this is the point where now that we have this circulation coming on shore, things will begin to start looking up here as the storm pretty much peaks out with its intensity. It's downhill from here for Laura, and that's great news for folks who are in the path to hopefully see this begin to deteriorate quicker than perhaps forecast at this point. So we got that water vapor imagery up there, and you can see that orange being the drier air, and just look at how it's kind of plucking off the top end of that storm there you see on the northern edge of it. So this again is in the upper atmosphere. So with that, yep, you can see it there, that orange right there in the top left part of the above those cities. We're getting that dry air, that troughing. So those are going to be stronger winds in the atmosphere that are starting to kind of push apart there. So that's a good sign that, you know, maybe Laura will begin to deteriorate a little bit more quickly, and that would be definitely a plus, something we'd be looking for. So now that we've had a look at the water vapor here, I do want to toss it back to the app just one more time, Matt. Definitely being a trooper out there, pressing all the magic buttons that make these forecasts so much easier to understand. Let's go back to the winds later here. I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to put this at 500 millibars here so that you can see this isn't quite where the water vapor is. This is a bit below that, a bit closer to the Earth's surface. So with that, we're going to look at some of these streamlines. Let me make them a bit easier to see. Change the opacity there. That might be a little better to see. And these wind streams, you can see, have an elongated shape to them too. Now that we pull this up on that top left side, that northwest quadrant of the storm, beginning to see some elongated looking streams on that side of the storm. So anything that tells us a sign that we're not getting a perfect circle here is a step in the right direction in terms of what's going on with the storm. And also on these wind streams, you can see overlaid on those red parts of the radar is we have those stronger colors for the wind barbs. So that is indicative that we are seeing strong storms there, and of course very tightly wound at the center, at the end of the loop there, kind of lining up. But notice tiny little wind barbs right at the center of circulation. So nice and calm in the eye. That'll give folks who may still be here, perhaps first responders and our storm chaser Aaron Jajak in there, give a little bit of a breather before we get right back into it with the second half of the storm. And thankfully, like we said, it looks like we're coming up short on that second half of the storm as that nears the coast and begins to make landfall. So that would be all great news that we would like to see from this. But yeah, Leslie, you've seen a lot of these storms, and you've got experience with every storm being different in shape, size, and its potential and its power. So talk to us a little bit about how this storm is shaping up from what you've seen. I know you've talked a bit about the damage and the recovery that we deal with these powerful storms, but in comparison to the data we've been looking at tonight, how do you think this holds up to some of the other storms that you've covered?
Well, there's a lot, starting with Andrew early when I was still in school. We didn't have the tool, all the bells and whistles in the toolbox that we have now. But I will say, when I look at these imagery, and our CEO, Andy, asked me early this morning if I thought this was going to be a Cat 4 or Cat 5, and I told him I thought it was going to probably remain as a Cat 4. And, I don't know, and no one knows. At that point, it was strictly conjecture. But, a lot of times you look at the infrared imagery, you look at the water vapor. I always go back to old-fashioned meteorology. We have so many tools at our hands. We have upper air soundings. We have, as Stefanie knows, Aaron J. Jack was posted in one of our in-house channels a photograph, and we were looking at samplings of the atmosphere, and it shows you so many things. There's so many tools at our fingertips, but sometimes you can put all of that aside, and you can just, even with the simplest tools, and the oldest tool in the toolbox is the satellite. And so, and the radar, and a lot of times you can depict a lot of things. So when I was watching this move through the Gulf, I did see a very well organized, dangerous, powerful hurricane. I can tell you when I watched Michael come on shore, and I'm just going to talk about a couple of ones in recent history, so people may remember, because they all do tend to blend after a while. You do it long enough, and some of the names recycle, the ones that aren't catastrophic. But I'm sure we'll see this name unfortunately retired. But I will say that and the particular banding features with this hurricane were impressive. However, when I watched Michael come onshore across the Florida Panhandle, I was sick. And I was sick to see. You're sick to see all of this. You don't want to see people get hurt, but I could just tell, because it continued to get stronger and stronger, and got into that Cat 5 level, and it wasn't officially a Cat 5. Eventually it did, but it just you just know those really, really rare intense hurricanes. They're just fortunately for all of us, they don't occur readily. Unfortunately, over the last couple of years, though, we've had Dorian, we've had Michael, we've had Maria, we've had Irma. There's been a multitude of storms in the last 5 to 6 years that have been Cat 4s and Cat 5s. So when I watched this one, and really we're not going to know till tomorrow, but we were talking, and Stefanie's been doing a great job, kind of analyzing the eye wall and the winds, and showing, some early indications of what we hope is some deterioration. But what we're not showing, and what's not going to be shown in the radar imagery or the satellite imagery, is the storm surge. So I don't want to minimize that threat, because I do think that is still a major problem, and wind damage is different than water damage. Right. So when the crews are out tomorrow and in the coming days, because it's going to take days to obviously survey this damage, we're going to see that narrow swath of water damage from the storm surge that we can't show you right now on infrared imagery, and we can show you products from the ocean, but we're not, there's no sensor that we can show you right now that says the storm surge is currently, there's modeling data, but there's no data that we can currently say, okay, the storm surge is currently this. So there's forecast products for that. So I don't want to minimize that risk, because I do think the storm surge in a narrow swath here is going to be very, very bad. And that wall of water at 15 feet or 14 feet or 16 feet, whatever the number winds up being, is going to be really, really serious and catastrophic for the people that lived there. So, we'll see how this plays out through the overnight. The best scenario, like Stefanie has been talking about, is, the rapid deterioration of this eye. The Hurricane Center's talked about it. They think this will rapidly deteriorate, but it still, unfortunately, came in as a 4. and that surge came in as a 4, and there is a sector that is dealing with Category 4 winds right now. So that, that's the concern that I have tonight. So I don't know what Matt has up. I can't see, but let me look. Oh, so we're in a box shot. So Matt, show that WSI real quick, because as Stefanie mentioned, the Lake Charles radar site is down, but this was the last wind gust that we got from them, which was 127.7. And I think, I can't remember, but I believe Irma, that must be the threshold. It was in the 120s. I remember in the high 120s, and I believe the Michael sensors were in that range too. So in the high 120s, I think is about the top end for these wind gauges before they just can't handle it. So, unfortunately, we won't have any more data from them tonight in terms of how high the winds got. But of course, will be ways to determine how high those winds got with Lake Charles, and then of course north of that. I mean, we've got the entire state of Louisiana that's got to deal with this hurricane tonight and into tomorrow. And a look at the infrared imagery again here. Actually, Matt, let me show you. Well, there's the path. I had the wrong thing loaded. Matt, let me go over to that 3D video that we took from the Visible from the Go 16, because this really does. Now, remember, this is an exaggerated. It's called an exaggerated product, but it does show those black tops, which are 60,000 feet in the atmosphere. And see those texturing? It looks like if you painted that with paint, that someone just took a paintbrush and did all those dots. Those are textures in really, really high cumulonimbus clouds. And you can see the stadium effect in that one image. It rotates around, but you can kind of see those spikes, those towers that you'll get in these really powerful Category 4, Category 5s. And I recorded this, I think, around 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock this afternoon Eastern time, and that was, I think, probably the max level of intensity. It maintained its intensity at 150, but this was really a good time to capture this particular snapshot of visible imagery, because it's the scans were taken every minute, so the resolution is very high. That's all thanks to Go 16 technology. We used to get scans, and we still do get them every 30 minutes, but now we can get some scans as quickly as once a minute. So the resolution extremely detailed, shows those texturing in the clouds, and really can kind of pinpoint the structure of that hurricane, which was extremely well organized when it moved through the Central Gulf earlier today. Okay, so I think I don't have anything else more on my end, Stefanie. I'm going to toss it back over to you one more time, and then we'll just kind of end everything because, as we've been mentioning now, it's going to be in the coming hours here how the winds impact through Louisiana, through Arkansas, and just curious to see if you've picked up anything while I've been babbling here for a couple of minutes with the app that you want to share with everybody.
Well, something else that has been notable, we're still getting these bandings coming through, but the rain is starting to creep further north. Folks in Shreveport, Ruston, you'll start to get some of this rain coming in here soon, Monroe, and again, that radar going out in Lake Charles is something that we were kind of fearful of here going into this evening. It's, again, like you mentioned, Leslie, that's about the threshold. I think studying back with Andrew, little fun fact, the National Hurricane Center used to be a bit closer to the coast there. Used to be there on the campus of the University of Miami. And when Andrew came through, did quite a number on the National Hurricane Center building that was there at the time and ripped their instruments off the roof. And so since 1992, they relocated to Florida International University's campus a bit inland. But I think it was right around 120 miles per hour, the last reading that they got before things went down there. So I think you're right. I think that's about the limit that these massive towers with instruments on them can take. But something on the radar that has been interesting just to continue to watch has been this banding. And I really like to see the detail that we can get in once we get zeroed in on a station. So once again, going with the per station, going to look at Houston one more time. We've seen things kind of from a distance here that have been useful. I'm going to switch over from velocity to reflectivity and get a better look on this. And even from the Houston radar, though we don't have data coming in from Lake Charles, looks like the center is beginning to move in and creep up towards I-10 here. And we're starting to see those strong thunderstorms remain within the eye wall. And to the point you were making, Leslie, about the storm surge, that's going to be rough once we head into daylight tomorrow morning and things begin to quiet down a bit for the immediate coastline, that storm surge is doing a number on the roads out there. We saw that when Aaron was covering, I believe it was Barrie last summer, and the coastline out here, once again, very vulnerable to those kinds of conditions in the storm surge. It's very powerful to see how that water comes in and really does a number on the landmass. Let's go ahead and pull up this radar over here, see if we're catching any notable things. I'm seeing a lot of red on the radar here. I'm going to pull up the velocity and see if we can find any couplets or anything of that sort. Yeah, it looks like we're just getting an immense amount of wind in here. We may have some rotation coming in down here. I'm going to go ahead and see if we got any warnings coming up here in our app. And of course, if you guys are in this area or along the path in the next couple of days and you're concerned, you've got our app here. You can check for these watches and warnings. If you've got your location services on, you can get prompted with all these weather alerts as they approach your area where you are. So I'm going to go ahead and start tapping around and see what kind of warnings we've got set up for this area. I think we saw maybe some rotation down by this way by Opelousas. Let's see. Not seeing any tornado warnings popping up here. Let's see in this area. No, I think we're faring pretty well so far around here, but this is just one particular area north of the storm. And something else, the storm motion itself at this point heading just about due north. You see behind me storm motion at 350 degrees and due north being 360 or 0. It's making its trek northward as it heads inland. We've gotten our landfall here. Now time for the second half of the race. Heading into this evening and the next couple of days, somewhat of some help that this storm is moving so quickly. Again, 15 miles per hour is pretty speedy for a storm of this magnitude, and that's actually going to help out versus a storm such as Harvey, where we had nowhere for this thing to go and it just kind of sat over Houston and rained itself out. The amount of water that's in this storm, in this atmosphere, I think that's something that you harped on at the end of our last broadcast, Leslie. Just the sheer amount of water in the atmosphere inside these systems is immense. It's incredible. And the force at which you got to think gallons upon gallons of water suspended in the atmosphere. It's just incredible to see a force of nature. Unfortunately, we don't want people to get hurt and be in danger here. That's the double-edged sword when you're weather geeks like us. It's beautiful to see how nature makes these powerful forces, but unfortunately when it does impact human life and property, it does get tough to watch here. But we've made it at least halfway through, and with that we'll continue to cover it here going into the next couple of days and letting you guys know everything that's happening up here in real time as we can.
Okay, Steph, thanks so much. I did try to reach out to Aaron, by the way, just before we came up, and I have not heard from him. I suspect that he is without service. Obviously, I know he's got his GPS, but he's probably out, trying to get video. So I want to encourage folks that, if you're going to continue to watch, this is going to do it for Stefanie and I for tonight or this morning. I want to let you know that meteorologist Mike Linden will be back into the studios probably around 5 a.m., he said, so look for his live reports around 6. If you're going to be up, I hope you're going to get some sleep too. I know Steph and I definitely want to get some sleep, but just some housekeeping for you. We will continue our coverage with Aaron, and Mike will utilize him as much as he can. I know you guys know this, when you're covering hurricanes, the technology also falls victim to these hurricanes, so you can't often get signals, and cell towers are knocked down, and the storm chasers are out doing their job, which is capturing video. Aaron has actually been in an instance just recently where he was actually helping tornado victims in a catastrophic tornado in Canada. So all kinds of things play out, but we will bring you the video, the sound, the meteorology. It'll all come in these coming hours and days, and Stefanie will be back later this afternoon, Steph, since we're talking Thursday now. So she'll be back.
The days just kind of blend together now. But we're tracking this storm.
Yeah, so she'll be back this afternoon, later today after she gets some rest, and Mike will be with you. I'm going to be taking a couple days off, and we will all reconvene in these coming days. We're so thankful. You guys are so supportive. You give great questions. Most of the comments are really positive in our channels, and it really does help meteorologists that are doing long hours. We appreciate the support, so thank you for doing that and being kind in your comments and your feedback. That things that you don't like, at least you're being polite, so we appreciate that for the most part. So with that said, it is 2:46 a.m. Eastern time, and in 1:46 Central time. We know that the circulation of Laura has completely moved inland. We are now going to see this eye and the eye wall move over Lake Charles. We're already seeing that now. We've lost wind gauges there. The last gust we got from our data and the National Weather Service was 127.7. So we'll see what happens in these overnight hours. But again, thank you guys for joining us. Mike will be in just a few hours, and I'll be recording the fast forecast for you guys and get that out here shortly. And I'm going to kind of focus more on the national picture since Mike will be doing so much on Laura. So if you want to know what's going on around the rest of the country, we'll have a quick fast forecast for you coming up here in just a few hours. All right, that'll do it for now, you guys. I hope you stay safe and have a great night. Thank you once again for joining us.